They made stops at the bank in her office, where he signed the purchase agreement and started the paperwork. Then it was off to lunch. After they ordered, she asked, "So how long have you been in the security business?" "Not long, really. Only a little over 3 months." "I didn't know there was that much money in the security business. I mean to pay to move a part-time employee and all." "I don't mean to pry. I'm sorry. I guess my natural female curiosity is getting the better of me." Their drinks arrived. Sean sipped his Coke and waited for the waitress to leave before answering. "Not at all. You're not prying. I asked the same questions when I was interviewed, and if you think the moving was something, you ought to hear some of the other conditions. Anyway, the simplest answer without boring you is, it's a pretty exclusive company." "You're not boring me," she said, flashing him a radiant smile. "Actually, you talk the least of almost any man I've met recently, and you seem to be one of the most fascinating. I've been trying to fit you into a category since I met you, which is something I'm pretty good at, by the way. I haven't been able to put a finger on you yet, so open up a little, I promise. If you bore me, I'll let you know." He smiled at her, looking amused. "I bet you would at that," he chuckled. "Well, let's see. I'm from Steubenville, Ohio, originally, but I grew up in Florida." "Where?" she asked, looking blank like she hadn't heard him. "Oh, Miami," he answered in a tone that suggested it should be obvious. "No, what?" "Steubenville. You know, home of Dean Martin and Jimmy the Greek." "I thought they were from Vegas," she answered, catching on. "No, not originally. Steubenville is on the banks of the Ohio River," he explained. "Where are you retired from?" she questioned, sipping her drink. "Ah, the Navy," he said smugly, obviously proud. "Ooh, not good," she said, disappointment etched on her face. "Oh, why not?" he questioned, somewhat defensively. "Ex-husband, bad memories," she sighed. "I ran off to Norfolk with him when I was 15. We lived in one of those off-base slum apartments the government subsidizes for the Navy personnel. Know what I mean?" "Yeah," he said simply. "Anyway, he was a drunk, it turned out, a mean one, and so were all his friends. Come to think of it, I don't think I ever met a sailor who wasn't either looking for a drink or to get laid in any way, shape, form. Anyway, the only good thing that came of it was my daughter, Jessie. She's a freshman at Georgetown this year. A real good kid, too. Jesus, you got me doing it again. You're the one that's supposed to be opening up, not me. Remember? I've done most of the talking all day. Now where were we?" "Well, I'm probably like all the other sailors you met. Stressful duty seems to make 'em drink more." "Does your ex have a stressful job?" "No, you don't. Not again. But I guess so. He was in the subs. Were you in the subs?" "I've been in a few," he answered, sidestepping his real job. "Anyway, I know what you mean. Those places are all pretty depressing. I couldn't live like that, and come to think of it, most of my friends that did are divorced or on the verge of getting divorced. No, when I came to Norfolk from the West Coast, I bought a houseboat. It was a real project, kind of like this house. I fixed it up and I lived there until I retired in October." "Where have you been living since?" she asked. "Hotels, mostly," he answered, glad for the change of subject. He had felt funny, talking about his times with the teams to strangers since he had retired. They just didn't understand. "Actually, I spent a month or so at a friend's cabin near Front Royal trying to get my head together. You know, figure out what I was gonna do. That's what made me decide to try and find a place near there when this job in DC came up. I also spent some time with my brother in Ohio over Thanksgiving. Since then, it's mostly been hotels. This job had me traveling a lot to do different training sessions." "What kind of training?" she questioned. "Oh, different things. I told you the job requirements were way out there." "What's this company again?" she asked, sounding lost. "Security International," he said slowly. "I've never heard of it," she said, shaking her head. "Like I said, it's real exclusive." "Yeah, so, you may not realize it, but this land you're buying is in the middle of some of the choicest, most expensive real estate in the country. A lot of very, very wealthy politicians, business people, and even actors live around here," she added defensively. Okay. I'll check out our client list to see if any of them are around here." "I wish you would have told me that before," he said, joking. "There goes the neighborhood." Anyway, the company specializes in high-tech security networks for the rich and the government, plus exclusive bodyguard stuff. Things like that. "So, you're kind of a bodyguard?" she asked, disbelieving. "No, my title right now is security consultant." He hesitated, not knowing how much to say, but thought what the hell, he hadn't talked to anyone but Eric for a long time. I'm recovering from an injury. I can't do bodyguard things yet. It's the reason I had to retire from the Navy in the first place. So I've been learning the other end, security systems. What and how extensive a system the client needs, the best way to implement it, and so on and so on. Mostly, I've been going through one training course or workshop after another. Everything from etiquette, protocol, and diplomacy to defensive driving. You know, how hard to drive through an ambush or terrorist attack? I even have to learn how to fly. In my free time, of course. To fly? For heaven's sake, why? Abby asked, completely baffled. I don't know for sure. It's just company policy. I think it has something to do with never being out of your element, and always being able to do the most to protect your client. For instance, you and your client are in a small plane, and the pilot has a heart attack and dies. No one else in the plane can fly, and you crash. If you knew how to fly the plane, you can better protect your client and yourself. Okay, she said, thinking. What if your client has a heart attack? Answer that one, she said smugly. Then you perform CPR and you contact the proper medical personnel. But to do that, you have to be an EMT, right? She asked. Not exactly. You can just learn CPR, but you have to be EMT qualified for the job. Like flying. Everyone has to. Why the protocol and diplomacy stuff? She asked, getting really interested. Their food arrived, and again, Sean waited until the waitress left and they started to eat before answering. We do a lot of work for the ultra-rich and visiting heads of state. The protocol and diplomacy is twofold. One, if you aren't comfortable around groups of powerful people or formal situations, you won't be as effective as if you were comfortable. And, sometimes, they want you to be able to blend in with the guests and not stand out as security, so they don't want you to appear stupid and embarrass the company. Again, if you're embarrassed, you'll be frustrated, and henceforth, not as effective. Abby just sat there open-mouthed. It gets better. We are encouraged to travel, learn at least 2 other languages, although only 1 is required, in our free time, and to be versed on most, if not all, topics of current events, art and film, politics and economy, so we can carry on intelligent conversations or give opinions if asked with just about anyone from any walk of life. So if need be, we can blend in anywhere. He took a deep breath after his long discourse. See, I'm sorry, now I'm talking too much, he said and took another bite of his sandwich. Are you kidding? It's nice to finally hear you say more than 1 sentence at a time. My God, I can't believe you thought you would bore me with that. It's fascinating. Have you met anyone famous yet? No. Oh, she sounded a little disappointed. But answer me 2 things if you can, she challenged. Okay, he accepted, taking another bite of his lunch. 1, how do you expect to find time to work on this house? And 2, if being like Superman is sort of a job requirement, you know, knowing a little bit about everything, how come you didn't know anything about antiques or American history? Sean chuckled, thinking, this girl is sharp. I bet nothing gets by her. Then he thought it out a moment, forming his answer. Well, number 1, I told you, I like having projects. My houseboat was the same way, and ready to sink when I bought her, and I spent all my free time getting her ship shape. You know, it made me feel good inside. Number 2, I need a place to live. And number 3, and finally, we were required to have a hobby. What about my second question? She pushed. He held up his hands in surrender. Touché, was all he could manage, munching his food contentedly. Your turn. Abby shook her head. If you thought you'd bore me with your story, I'm not even gonna start. You already heard the most exciting part of my life, she said as she plopped a French fry in her mouth. Come on. It can't be that bad. Quid pro quo, Miss Deacon. Alright. I've lived here in this county all my life except for my 2 years of hell in Norfolk. I left when I was 15 and came back when I was 18, right before Jesse was born. That was the big scandal in these parts back then, when I came home with 2 black eyes and pregnant as a house to boot. But Mama and Daddy were great. They always stood by me. They let me come back home, helped me with Jesse, and even helped me through my 2 years at Shenandoah Community College. I earned an associate's in marketing and accounting, worked in D.C. for 5 to 6 years, but I couldn't stand the drive every day, or the traffic. I've been selling real estate for a little over 5 years now. Rather successful, I might add. I have a nice home, a great kid, and a great family, although my little brother's a little flaky. But all in all, I guess I'm pretty content. What, no Mr. Deacon to go home to? He inquired, trying not to sound too interested, although he was completely captivated. If you must know, no, there isn't. Mike Deacon was my ex. I would have taken back my maiden name, but I didn't want to confuse Jessie. Well, it sure is somebody's loss. You're a smart lady. A man would be lucky to snag you. Thank you. Not interested, she answered curtly. I don't blame you. Sounds like you got it pretty together, he admitted, admiration in his voice. Thank you, she accepted. You're welcome. I take it there isn't a Mrs. Murphy either? She inquired, also trying not to sound interested. No, I'm like you, content with myself. Most of the time, anyway. When I was in the service, I didn't want to end up like you and yours. No offense. None taken. A lot of my friends ended up that way too. I was pretty much married to my career, and doing what sailors do. At least you're honest, she chuckled, smiling. Thank you. You know, you're lucky having things so simple, and being content with it. I've always been on the move. My brother's a lot like you are, or he'd like to be anyway. That's all he's ever wanted. A simple, steady life with a family to back him. Now you're doing it to me again, getting me to run my mouth. They laughed together. Why, thank you. It's nice to know someone is opening doors to you. You know what I mean? You're not just trying to impress me or come on to me. It's nice. No pressure. No line. Thank you. But I think you're stalling. Tell me something else interesting about yourself. There isn't anything else. Well, maybe one thing, she said coyly. And what is that, pray tell? He answered, arcing his eyebrows. Well, I have another part-time job that might interest you. Now, anyway. I work part-time in an antique shop. My daddy runs it. It's kind of the family business, she said like a confession, which it was after the way she had talked earlier, and Sean pounced on it. Aha, he said mockingly. A family of cutthroats and thieves. I knew it. You're just after the treasure that's locked in that house you just sold me. No, silly, she laughed, not taking offense to his kidding. No, my daddy's not like that at all. We're all pretty tame as vicious antique dealers go. My brother Bob's ethics are another story, however. I'll tell you what, she said, changing the subject. I don't have any other appointments today. What do you say we go back, get your draft at the office, sign the papers getting you your house, then we'll go to some of the local antique shops and I can give you some tips and you can see what some of the stuff costs. If you're up to it. I know a place you can get the best steak or prime rib you've ever eaten, she said boldly. He looked at her, surprised. Why, Miss Deacon, are you asking me out on a date? She thought about it a moment, then answered, Why, yes, I guess I am, Mr. Murphy. Well, I don't know. I've got to move, and I've got a lot of cleaning to do, and you understand, don't you? You don't know what you're missing, Murphy. I don't do this every day, she said seductively. No, I guess you don't, he said, smiling. In that case, I accept, but Dutch treat. It was her turn to smile. Not on your life, Murphy. They made a quick stop at Sean's bank for the certified check, then went to Abby's office, where the rest of the paperwork went quickly. She handed him the keys to the house, and assured him her office would file everything with the county. Then they were off for their afternoon trek through the antique shops. They left the last one when it closed at 5, and on the way back to her office, where he had left his Jeep, he admitted it was a lot more interesting than he'd been imagining it would be, but there was certainly a lot to learn. Abby dropped Sean in his Jeep, saying she'd pick him up at his hotel at 7. He agreed and they parted. Sean glanced at his watch. 6:45. Not long now, he thought. Sean had showered. A long, steamy, relaxing one. He'd been ready for some time and was relaxing on his bed, contemplating his whirlwind day and making lists of supplies he would need, and people he'd need to contact, and in what order. He'd give old Jack Braggs a call tomorrow, and see if he could spare him a couple days, at least to haul up some tools. Eric could probably come down for a weekend, but he wanted to do most of it himself, like he had with his boat. He'd get help doing the big things. On the top of his list was an electrical contractor. He needed to at least get a utility pole to draw power from out there. He noticed the kitchen had only been wired for electricity, and the wiring was at least 50 years old. He'd need an updated service just to run power tools. A roofer would be in the slate, and an estimate for the windows would probably cost a fortune. That would be first priority. There would be plenty to do just cleaning, sorting trash from junk, and junk from stuff he could fix or sell. What a day, he said to the empty room. He had only planned to browse the homes in the area today and get an idea of prices. The last thing he expected was to buy a house on the spot and end up on a date with a very attractive, intelligent woman. He was excited about the prospects of both. The house had fascinated him, drew him into it, and he was looking forward to the challenge. Abby, he didn't know about. He wasn't looking for a relationship, but he enjoyed her company, her confidences. She was very aggressive and knew what she wanted. He liked that. Too many women were timid, afraid of everything. Abby was her own person. He figured he'd relax and see what happened, but he'd let her know up front he wasn't out to be tied down or to tie her down. He picked up the phone and started dialing Eric's number to tell him the good news when a knock sounded at the door. "Coming," he said, setting the phone back down in its cradle and swinging his legs easily off the bed to take 3 steps to the door. He opened it, and Abby stood there smiling nervously, but looking beautiful in a tight pair of jeans and a tight tan sweater that showed off her lush figure. Her hair was down and cascaded over her shoulder, framing her face and accenting her green eyes. "Come in," Sean said after a moment when he realized he had been staring at her speechless. "Thank you," she said, coming through the door. "Sorry I'm early, but I got an attack of butterflies and figured if I waited I would chicken out and not come at all." "Would you like a beer to settle your nerves? I've got some on ice in the sink." "Thanks, I'd love one," she said, plopping down in the chair by the door. Sean went back and pulled 2 bottles of Bud out of the ice-filled sink. As he walked back, snapping off the tops, he noticed her watching him. "Don't be nervous, I don't bite," he said, handing her the cold bottle. "Would you like a glass?" "No." She shook her head vigorously and took a deep drink. "Does it show that much? My nerves, I mean." "Not really. Just a good guess." "I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. I'm acting like a silly schoolgirl. It's been so long since I've been on a date. I guess it's like the first time. I'm sorry." "No need to be sorry. I was feeling a little jittery myself for the same reason," he reassured her, smiling. She took another long drink. "I don't believe that for a minute," she laughed. Not to change the subject. Please do, she said eagerly. "Do you know an electrical contractor? A roofer who does slate or chimney sweep?" Sean asked, referring to his list. "Why, I think I can help out. What do you got there?" "A list of supplies and experts I need to get with," he said, handing her the list. My, you've been busy and so organized, too," she teased. "Yeah, I can help you with all this. Just bring a copy by the office tomorrow, and I'll get the names and numbers out of my Rolodex." Abby looked at her watch. "We should get going. I want to take you to one more antique shop on the way." Sean groaned. "Oh, no, Abby, please. I promise I'll be good. Anything, just not another antique store today." He clasped his hands together as if begging. "I thought you enjoyed today," she pouted. I did. I'm kidding. I had a great time. I was just a little overwhelmed is all. This is different. You want to find out the value of the stuff in your house, don't you? Well, yeah, I guess. I want to take you and introduce you to a dealer who won't cheat you, who will give you a fair price or take commission and won't gouge you." "Your father?" Sean guessed. "That's right, my daddy," Abby said proudly. "Meeting your father on the first date? Are you sure you want to get that serious, Abby?" Sean joked. "Come on, mister," Abby replied, poking him in the ribs in mock anger. Okay, he said, jumping away. "Let me grab my keys and we're off."